In a previous video I showed these super nice 218 grain SAECO number 418 cast bullets that Walter Bunning sent to me. We know him as Viejo on YouTube, and today I'm running them through the Lyman 45 Lube-Sizer to get them ready to shoot in 41 Magnum. So it's a good looking bullet, a little bit of a bevel base, kind of a traditional semi-wide cutter shape, and I've got this set up with the 410 sizing die, and this is a mixture of the Beeswax and Alox 50-50 mix that they call the NRA Formula. Works real good for most of the cast bullets that I run, so we'll push it in there and size it, add a little bit more pressure. I like to let it dwell a little bit and flow the lube in and back out. Then we want to check and make sure our lube grooves are full. I'm getting a little bit on the base because I want to push the bullet down in far enough to size this top band, so I'm getting a little bit of exposure on the bottom with the bevel base. But I'm going to run that one through again just to make sure the lube groove is full. There we go. You can tell the second time it's a lot easier. It's not doing the sizing, so it's not a big problem. I'll just wipe that grease off the bottom, but you can see now that the lube groove is nice and full. So this lube size die is leaving just a little bit of a mark right there next to the seam where the mold halves close, so they might be just a little bit out of round, but I think they'll shoot quite well. If we look at the bullet, trying to see if I can pick up any outer roundness there, but sometimes the holes in the lube dies will make interesting tracks on bullets too. I have two different 410 size dies. I believe that this one is a Lyman, but yeah, that one looks real nice. It came out real good. A little bit thin on the lube right there, so I'm going to put it in one more time. It's a balancing act between how much pressure you run on the lube with the piston that's in the tube versus filling the grooves. If you run it a whole lot of pressure trying to make sure you fill it up in one stroke, a lot of times you'll blow more lube past the base. So I run a little bit less pressure typically, and I'll just run them in a couple of times. But like I say, I'm running this down with a the nose punch that I'm using is one that I made myself. It's just a flat nose punch that pushes right on the knee plat of the bullet. I can pop that out and show it. But there we go. That one's nicely lubed. So if we undo the set screw here, we can pop that out. This is just a plain nose punch that I just turned myself. It works well on these flat nosed bullets. It just pushes right on the front, and of course it won't go any further down than the top of the die there it hits, so you can't push it any further than that unless you reduce the diameter to fit inside the size of bullet that you're sizing. But for this, I'm right on the edge. If I go any deeper, I'm going to squirt lube on the base. And if I go any less, I don't get the sizing on the top band that I want. Just a little bit more pressure, not much. There we go. That's looking nice. Most of the 41 bullets that I've shot so far have been either as cast and pan lubed or high-tech coated commercial bullets or traditionally lubed commercial bullets. This, I'm trying to think if I've lube-sized any 41 Magnums before these. I don't recall. I didn't remember that I had a 410 lube size die. I bought a mold from a place in the Upper Peninsula up in Baraga, and I got the Keith type RCBS mold, which I also showed in a previous video, and it had a lube size die in it, and I forgot that I had that one, and then I bought this one thinking that I didn't have one. Since then I actually keep a spreadsheet that lists which ones that I have, and I have it accessible on remotely from my phone and whatnot, so that if I'm someplace in shopping and I run across one, I'll know if I already have it or not. I've been trying to keep track of my molds and nose punches and sizing dies so that I know what I have. It's easy to forget. I should do the same thing with neck sizing bushings and whatnot. But I figure I'll loop size these bullets from Walter and get them loaded and shoot them probably in the Model 57 and maybe the Red Hawk. I'll probably start with Ramshot Enforcer, maybe Unique. Yeah, that's looking real good. That's a good looking one right there. You can see the lube is filling the groove real good. Shiny where the die has sized the bullet down. I say this is a 410 die. 411 might also be appropriate, but I think we'll run these 410s and see how they go. I noticed that the driving band, or I don't know if it's really a driving band, the top band on these bullets is a little bigger than I thought they would be. Let's turn on the caliper here. Okay, that is at 0. Let's real quick just take a measurement on that very top band. And we're getting 413 there. Let's turn it 90 degrees across the seam, and that's 4165 across the seam. So that's probably part of that artifacting that we see along the seam. The sizing die is sizing more along that joint where the two mold halves come together, so you see that interesting little line, and that might be also lining up with the holes in the lube size die that lets the lube in. Yeah, see, I didn't have that pushed down good. See, I squirted grease past the base there, but that's not a big deal. You just take your razor blade or whatever and just kind of real carefully scrape it off there, and you're good to go. And I did build up a little bit inside the die there, but I use a little tool and just dig that extra out of there, and then it doesn't get stuck on the next bullet. Just save it for later, put it back in. I wasn't paying attention, and I put a lot of pressure on the piston in there when I didn't have good pressure down on the handle, so that's what causes it to squirt past that. Like I said, I've got this bullet in there just enough to catch the top, but I'm catching one of the little lube holes in the die at the same time, so you sometimes get a little squirt by the bevel base. Kind of makes it a little bit more susceptible to that. Okay, there. Got that cleaned out good enough. We'll just lay that to the side. Let's go ahead and run that one back in and get a little bit more lube in the groove there. Alright, that's looking better. So there we go. I'll show you what I was talking about here. I'll pull out another lube die here. So the lube squirts in through these holes, so depending on how far down you push the bullet. Now some of these have 4 holes, some of them have less depending on the length of the bullet that you typically lube. You know, when you get this here, and there's a piston inside of here, a plunger I guess you'd call it, that blocks off that hole until it's pushed down when you size, and when you get it lined up with a hole, the grease will go in the groove. So I want to size up further to this top one, so if you keep pushing down there and you start to expose, you're going to fill your crimp groove full of lube too, which you don't necessarily want. So there's a balancing act between how far you push the bullet in to get as much sizing as you want versus to where you squirt the lube. Now obviously if you push this down, say this far, you'd get a bunch of grease up on the nose of the bullet, which you don't want. So the holes in this die don't necessarily match with these, but sometimes the holes are in different locations. Like see here, this row of holes is down deeper than this row, so it's a balancing act. You know, you want to get it far enough to get the lube in that one, but you know, not too far. About right there is as far as you want to go. Now the problem there is you know, we're starting to be lined up with holes on the base, and you can squirt grease underneath the base, especially with that bevel base. The focus here isn't that great with this camera, but you can kind of see what I'm talking about, where I'm balancing how far down you push that bullet to get the lube where you want it versus the sizing that you want to achieve as well. So let's run that down in. Probably have enough pressure, so we'll just go ahead and run it back out, see how it looks. And you can warm up the lube too. That one I'd like to just run a little bit more. This beeswax based lube is pretty sticky at room temperature. It's relatively firm but not hard solid like some of the hard lubes. yeah, that looks good. And then I'll just, just wipe the base off. What I typically do is just put the paper towel on the bench like this, and then just wipe the base off, and then that's all ready to go. So it's not that hard to lube and size them. It's a little slower than some of the other methods, but it's enjoyable and it's fun. Something to do at the bench on a Sunday. And get Walter's bullets ready to shoot in the 41 Magnum. Here's another. Add just a little bit more pressure. And there you have it. Nice full lube groove. You can see the lead is shiny where the lube dye and sizing dye was sizing the lead down. This camera just does not focus real good at this distance. I should have filmed this with the other phone instead of the webcam. But there you have it. I'm just lubing some of Walter's bullets, and I'll be loading these up before you know it and have them out to the range. Thanks for watching.